$500 for this. It's against the HOA rules.
You ever do something so small, yet it somehow turns your whole life upside down? Yeah, that's exactly what happened when I decided to repaint my mailbox. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind with white fences, trimmed lawns, and a homeowners association that takes itself way too seriously. Everything had to be uniform. Grass exactly 3 inches high, shutters only approved shades of beige, and yes, even mailboxes had to match a community standard. But mine was old, rusty, and leaning to one side. So one Saturday morning, I decided to fix it up. I bought a new black metal mailbox, added a shiny gold number plate, and even put a small American flag magnet on the side. It looked classy, clean, proud, but apparently, it was also a crime. Because 2 days later, I got a bright yellow envelope in the mail, stamped, urgent notice. Inside was a letter from the HOA. You are in violation of Community Code 4.3a, unapproved alteration to property facade. Fine, $500. I laughed out loud. $500 for a mailbox? That laughter didn't last long, because this was just the beginning. You know that one neighbor who seems to think the whole street belongs to them? Yeah, that was Linda. Everyone else just called her Karen. You could spot her from a mile away, the pastel visor, the oversized sunglasses, the golden retriever that looked more tired of life than she did. Every morning, like clockwork, she'd parade around the neighborhood with her clipboard, sipping iced coffee through a metal straw, pretending she was doing community inspection rounds. But let's be honest, she wasn't keeping the neighborhood in shape. She was keeping tabs. The first time I met her was 3 days after I moved in. I was carrying boxes into my garage when I heard someone clear their throat behind me. I turned around and there she was, arms crossed, clipboard ready, lips pursed tighter than a Ziploc bag. "Hi there," she said in that overly sweet voice that somehow felt more threatening than kind. "I'm Linda, head of our HOA compliance committee. Welcome to the neighborhood." I smiled and thanked her, but before I could even finish, she pointed at my lawn. "You'll want to cut that a little shorter. We keep grass between 2.5 and 3 inches max. Oh, and trash pickup is Tuesday mornings. Cans must be out after 6 p.m. Monday, and in by 10 a.m. Tuesday. I'd hate for you to get fined your first week." She said that last part with a smirk, like she hoped I'd get fined. I remember thinking, wow, she really loves this power thing, huh? Fast forward 2 years, and everyone knew Linda was the self-appointed sheriff of suburbia. She had a rule book thicker than a Bible, and a personality twice as hard to argue with. One time, she fined a retired veteran because his flag was too faded. Another time, she reported a single mom for having a pink bike parked on her porch. Apparently, it clashed with the community's neutral palette. So when she saw my new mailbox, shiny black, gold numbers, a little flag magnet on the side, I should have known it was only a matter of time before she made it her business. It happened the next morning. I was watering my flowers when I heard the familiar squeak of her sneakers. Linda stopped dead in front of my house, staring at my new mailbox like it had personally offended her ancestors. She scribbled something on her clipboard, then called out, "Excuse me." I turned, already feeling that pit in my stomach. "Yes? Did you get approval for this mailbox installation?" I blinked. "Approval? It's just a mailbox. The old one was rusting." Her eyes narrowed. "Just a mailbox? Oh, no. This violates Community Code 4.3a. All exterior structures must be pre-approved by the HOA before installation." Exterior structures? "Linda, it's not a shed. It's a box that holds letters." She didn't laugh. Instead, she pulled out her phone, took a photo, and said, "I'll have to report this. You should expect a notice soon." And just like that, she walked away. Her dog gave me this look like, "Yeah, buddy, I'm sorry too." 2 days later, right on schedule, I got the bright yellow envelope, stamped, urgent notice, inside. You are in violation of Community Code 4.3 on approved alteration to property facade. Fine, $500. $500 for a mailbox. I thought it was a joke at first. I even laughed until I realized she was dead serious. So I called the HOA office and asked to speak to whoever handled violations. Guess who picked up? Homeowners Association. This is Linda speaking. I swear I could hear her smile through the phone. Oh, hi, Linda, I said slowly. Listen, about that fine. She cut me off. Yes, I was just about to file that. You'll need to remove the non-compliant mailbox immediately and replace it with a standard model. A standard model? The thing was falling apart. I just wanted something cleaner. It's not about looks, she said. It's about consistency. If we let you change yours, next thing you know someone will install a neon green one. We must maintain order. Order? I repeated. Linda, it's a neighborhood, not a military base. That got her quiet for about 3 seconds. Then she said, rules are rules. You signed the agreement when you moved in. I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to yell. Okay, what if I paint it to match the others? Will that work? No, she said flatly. The structure itself is non-approved. You'll need to purchase the authorized model from our vendor. I looked it up later. That authorized vendor mailbox costs $289, plus $60 installation. So basically, she wanted me to pay $349 more on top of the $500 fine, just to make my mailbox blend in. By that weekend, the story had spread. You see, in our neighborhood, gossip traveled faster than Wi-Fi. At the park, Mrs. Dwyer whispered, "Did you hear about the new mailbox scandal?" At the mail kiosk, Mr. Harris muttered, "Linda's at it again. Poor guy. Just wait. She'll come for your flower pots next." And he wasn't wrong. Because Linda didn't just enforce the rules. She enjoyed it. It gave her purpose, control. She'd brag at meetings about how, thanks to her vigilance, property values stayed high. As if catching people's trash cans out 5 minutes late made her the hero of suburbia. But what she didn't realize was that people were starting to get tired of her little reign of terror. When my mailbox fine hit the neighborhood group chat, I suddenly had all eyes, dozens of them. One woman wrote, she fined me for having a bird feeder. Apparently, it attracted non-approved wildlife. Another guy added, she told me to repaint my garage door because the beige was too warm, whatever that means. Turns out, everyone had a Linda story. And now, she had finally pushed one person too far, me. I started keeping track of her patrols. Every morning, 7:45 a.m. sharp, she'd start at the top of the street and work her way down. Sometimes she'd take pictures of people's lawns. Sometimes she'd measure fence height with a tape measure. I'm not joking, an actual tape measure. One morning, I caught her crouched in front of my house with a ruler, measuring the distance between my mailbox and the curb. "Good morning, Linda," I said, sipping coffee. She jumped like I'd caught her stealing cookies. "Just making sure everything's up to code," she said quickly. "Oh, I'm sure you are," I replied. "You might want to measure your own mailbox while you re-add it. Looks like your flag's hanging a little too low." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She stood up, muttered something under her breath, and stormed off. That was the moment I realized something. Linda wasn't doing this for the community. She was doing it for control. She loved being the person people feared. She loved the power that came with saying, "I'll have to report you." But what she didn't expect was that I wasn't going to roll over like everyone else. That night, I sat down at my desk, pulled up the HOA bylaws, and started reading. 68 pages of legal jargon and nonsense. But buried deep in Section 4.3a The one she quoted was a loophole. It said, "Mailboxes must remain in good repair and visually consistent with neighborhood appearance." Visually consistent, that was it. Nothing about color, design, or vendor approval. I smiled. For the first time in days, I felt like I had a fighting chance. Because if Linda wanted a battle, I was ready to give her one. The day I found that loophole in the HOA rulebook, I swear I felt like I'd just discovered buried treasure. There it was, written plain as day. Mailboxes must remain in good repair and visually consistent with neighborhood appearance. That's it. No mention of color, no mention of brand, no demand for HOA-approved vendors. And my mailbox? It was brand new, freshly painted, and matched the neighborhood aesthetic perfectly. If anything, it improved it. That meant one thing. Linda was bluffing, and I wasn't about to let her get away with it. Step 1. The research that night, I stayed up past midnight digging into every HOA bylaw, community rule, and amendment. I highlighted, underlined, and bookmarked everything that could back me up. Turns out, Linda wasn't even supposed to issue fines on her own. The HOA board had to vote first. But she'd been acting like judge, jury, and executioner for years, issuing fines with her signature alone. She was breaking the very rules she forced everyone else to follow. And I wasn't the only one who'd noticed. Step 2. Building the army. The next morning, I printed out copies of my letter and rulebook findings and went door to door. First stop, the retired veteran, Mr. Clark, the guy Linda fined for his faded flag. He answered the door with his usual gruff tone, but when I explained what I'd found, his eyes lit up. "You mean she's been doing this without approval?" he asked. "Exactly," I said. "And she's been getting away with it because nobody checked the bylaws." He smiled for the first time since I'd met him. "Well, son," he said, "it's about time someone did." By the end of the day, I'd talked to nearly a dozen neighbors, and almost everyone had a Linda story. Mrs. Patel got fined for a non-regulation garden gnome. The Millers were cited for leaving their holiday lights up 3 days past New Year's. Even sweet old Mrs. Henderson got written up because her front door wreath had too much red. Every single person was fed up. All they needed was someone to stand up first. That's when the idea hit me. We'd take this to the next HOA meeting together. Step 3. The preparation. I spent the next few days preparing like I was going to court. I gathered photos of mailboxes around the neighborhood, including Linda's. Guess what? Hers didn't match the approved standard either. The flag on hers was a different color, the post slightly taller, and she'd added a decorative base that wasn't on the vendor's model. She was guilty of her own crime. I printed side-by-side photos, my mailbox and hers. Identical quality, similar color scheme. If mine was illegal, so was hers. The HOA meeting the next Tuesday night. I walked into the community center with a folder full of evidence and about 20 neighbors behind me. It was the most crowded meeting the HOA had ever seen. Linda was already at the front table, tapping her pen, pretending not to notice the crowd forming. Her smile faltered when she saw me walk in. "Ah, Mr. Taylor," she said in that condescending tone. "Nice of you to join us. Are you here to address your violation?" "Oh, I'm here for more than that," I replied, taking a seat right in front. The board president, a soft-spoken guy named Roger, called the meeting to order. They discussed some budget nonsense first, but when they got to new business, Linda perked up. "Next, we have an item regarding property compliance," she announced. "Specifically, a mailbox installation that violates community standards." She gestured toward me like she was presenting a criminal to the court. I stood up calmly and said, "Actually, I'd like to speak on that." Roger nodded. "Go ahead." The showdown. I walked up to the podium, pulled out my folder, and laid down my copies of the bylaw. "According to our own rulebook," I began, "mailboxes must remain in good repair and visually consistent with the neighborhood appearance. That's it. There's no mention of mandatory colors, vendors, or models. Which means, technically, my mailbox complies. Linda's lips thinned. That's not the spirit of the rule, she snapped. I turned to her. Then maybe the rule needs better wording. A few people chuckled softly. I held up 2 photos, mine and hers. Also, according to your logic, this mailbox here, I pointed to hers, is non-compliant too. It's taller than regulation and has a decorative base not listed under community-approved models. The crowd murmured. A few gasps. One guy even whispered, "Oh, she's done." Linda's face went pale, then red. That's completely different," she stammered. "Mine was approved years ago." "By who?" I asked. "Because the records show you approved it yourself when you were on the compliance committee." Now the room erupted. Laughter, whispers, even applause. Linda slammed her pen on the table. "This is out of order," she barked. "You're turning this into a circus." Roger raised his hand to quiet the room. "Linda," he said slowly, "is it true you've been issuing fines without full board approval?" Her voice dropped. "It's within my authority as..." Roger cut her off. "Actually, no. According to Section 7.2, fines must be reviewed and voted on by the board. You've been bypassing procedure." Now that was the knockout punch. The turning point. The meeting shifted instantly. Neighbors started voicing their frustrations, one after another. "She fined me for my trash can, and me for my bird bath. She threatened to sue me over a basketball hoop." Linda tried to talk over them, but nobody was listening anymore. Her control was slipping. After a long pause, Roger sighed and said, "All right. It is clear we need to review our enforcement process and evaluate all fines issued without full board consent. Effective immediately, all pending fines are suspended until further notice." The room burst into applause. And for the first time, Linda didn't have a comeback. She just sat there, jaw clenched, eyes glaring at me like she wanted to set me on fire with her mind. I didn't care, because right then, I knew the neighborhood had finally woken up. The fallout the next day, word spread like wildfire. Neighbors stopped me on my morning walk, giving me thumbs up or high fives. "About time someone stood up to her," one said. "You're the hero of the block," another joked. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just wanted a mailbox that didn't fall apart when it rained. But somehow, I'd become the accidental leader of a neighborhood revolt. That week, the HOA board called an emergency session. Without Linda, they voted to restructure the compliance committee entirely, requiring that all future fines be approved by at least 3 members. They even decided to form a new resident feedback group to ensure everyone had a voice before new rules passed. And best of all, they agreed to refund all unjust fines issued in the past 2 years. Over $5,000 worth. Linda, of course, wasn't happy. She sent out one last email claiming the neighborhood was descending into chaos without strict enforcement. But after that, she disappeared from the committee entirely. Apparently, she'd resigned to focus on personal matters. Yeah, sure, Linda. The victory a week later, I got a letter from the HOA. Not a warning, not a fine, just one sentence. "Your mailbox is deemed compliant. Thank you for your patience." No apology, but I didn't need one. Because as I looked around the neighborhood, I saw something new. Color, personality. People were repainting their mailboxes, adding flowers, decorations, little touches that made each home unique again. The street finally looked alive, not like a copy-paste suburb ruled by fear. And sometimes, early in the morning, I'd still see Linda walking her dog. No clipboard this time. Just a woman, silent and humbled, pretending she didn't see me. But I always waved anyway, because sometimes the best revenge is just living peacefully while your mailbox gleams in the sun. I thought the fight was over. After that HOA meeting, I thought logic had won, that reason had prevailed, and that Linda, our self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac, would finally back off. Oh, I was wrong. Because if there's one thing I've learned about people like her, it's that they don't lose quietly. They plot, they scheme, and when the power starts slipping through their fingers, they'll do anything to grab it back. The retaliation the week after the meeting, things got weird. Little things started happening around my house. My trash can, which I always left neatly by the garage, was suddenly found tipped over on the curb, like someone had kicked it. Then my morning paper stopped showing up for 3 days straight. Coincidence? Maybe. But then one morning, I walked out to find a warning notice stuck to my door. Violation. Unapproved landscaping modifications. Your front yard plants do not conform to the approved neighborhood aesthetic. Unapproved landscaping. I looked at my flower bed, 3 rose bushes and some lavender, the same ones that had been there for years. That's when it hit me. Linda wasn't done. Even after the board took her power away, she was still trying to enforce her rules through intimidation. She'd found a new way to fight, through harassment. Collecting the evidence, I could have complained to the board again, but this time, I wanted to make sure I had proof. If Linda was still snooping around and trying to intimidate me, I'd catch her in the act. So I set up a small security camera above my garage. Nothing fancy, just one of those motion-activated models. 2 days later, I checked the footage, and there she was. At 6:42 a.m., Linda was standing in front of my yard, camera phone in hand, taking pictures of my flowers. She even measured the distance between the rose bushes and the sidewalk. Then she walked to my mailbox, bent down, and, get this, actually pulled out her tape measure again. It would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. I downloaded the footage, timestamped it, and saved it in a folder labeled Exhibit A. But that was just the start. The social media spark that night. As I was scrolling through the neighborhood Facebook group, I noticed Linda had posted something new. Friendly reminder, please ensure your front yards comply with HOA landscaping standards. Let's keep our neighborhood uniform and beautiful. Oh, that was rich. So I decided to respond, politely. I commented, speaking of uniformity, does that include measuring everyone's mailbox at dawn? Because I've got some interesting footage from this morning. I didn't even have to post the video. Within minutes, my comment got over 40 likes and a stream of laughing emojis. People started replying. Wait, she's still doing that? Didn't the board strip her authority? You should post the video. So I did. I uploaded a short clip, just 10 seconds, of Linda crouching in front of my yard with her ruler. I blurred her face out a bit. I'm not a monster, but everyone knew exactly who it was. I captioned it. Just another peaceful morning in our neighborhood. #HOA Life #Mailbox Chronicles. The post exploded. Within an hour, it had over 100 comments. People started sharing their own Linda encounters. Mrs. Patel posted a photo of her illegal garden gnome. Mr. Clark shared a picture of his flag fine notice. One neighbor even uploaded a clip of Linda yelling at a teenager for parking his bike near the sidewalk. The whole neighborhood was fed up, and now they finally had proof that they weren't crazy. The so-called neighborhood watchdog had become the community's biggest nuisance. The backfire begins. By the next day, the post had spread beyond our little Facebook group. It somehow got picked up by a local community page, the kind that shares funny neighborhood drama and local news. The headline? Local HOA member caught taking mailbox measurements at sunrise. And that's when things really got interesting. People started leaving sarcastic comments like, "Someone call the mailbox police. This lady takes HOA to a whole new level. This is why aliens won't visit us." The story even made it onto Reddit under a thread called R Fine Folks, where it got thousands of upvotes. I woke up to my phone blowing up with notifications and messages from friends saying, "Dude, you're viral." I didn't want fame. I just wanted peace. But it was too late. The internet had spoken. And the internet does not take kindly to Korens. The HOA board steps in. 2 days later, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. This time, Linda wasn't invited, but she showed up anyway, trying to act like nothing was wrong. Roger, the board president, looked exhausted. "Linda," he began, "we've received multiple complaints and, well, we've all seen the video." She crossed her arms. "This is ridiculous. That video was taken out of context. I was ensuring compliance for the safety of the neighborhood." Roger rubbed his temples. "You were measuring mailboxes. It's a matter of consistency." She insisted. "Without structure, this place will fall apart." Another board member, Janet, spoke up. "Linda, nobody's asking for chaos. But you can't keep harassing residents. You've become the reason people hate this HOA." Linda scoffed. "I've done nothing wrong." That's when I stood up and calmly placed a folder on the table. Inside, printed screenshots, photos of her emails, timestamps from my footage, and even statements from 5 neighbors who caught her trespassing on their lawns. "Nothing wrong?" I said quietly. "You fined veterans, bullied families, and measured flowers at sunrise. You're not protecting the neighborhood, Linda. You're terrorizing it." The room fell dead silent. Roger sighed. "Linda, effective immediately, you are removed from the compliance committee. The board will also be reviewing your previous enforcement actions for possible reimbursement to residents." Her face turned red, not angry red, embarrassed red. She tried to speak, but the words just wouldn't come out. She gathered her papers, mumbled something about ungrateful people, and stormed out. As the door shut behind her, the room let out a collective exhale, like everyone had been holding their breath for years. The aftermath: by the next week, things started to change. The board sent out a notice announcing a new rule. All HOA enforcement actions must now be approved by a minimum of 3 board members and documented in writing. They also invited residents to join a new community improvement committee, which would focus on collaboration instead of punishment. For the first time ever, people actually wanted to get involved. The same neighbors who used to hide from HOA emails were now volunteering ideas, flower exchanges, cleanup days, even a neighborhood BBQ. It was like the entire community had taken a deep breath of freedom. And my mailbox? Still standing, still shining, still the same black and gold beauty that started it all. Sometimes I'd catch people walking by, taking photos of it, jokingly saying things like, "The mailbox that ended tyranny." And honestly, they weren't wrong. The lesson a few days later, I got one last email from Linda. No greeting, no apology. Just one line. "I hope you're happy with what you've done." I sat back, reading it, and couldn't help but smile. Because yeah, I was. Not because I'd won, but because for once, people stood up to something unfair, and it actually made a difference. The funny thing about people like Linda is that they think rules give them power. But power doesn't come from rules. It comes from respect. And she'd lost that a long time ago. Now, when I walk my dog in the mornings, the neighborhood feels different, warmer, freer. There are colorful mailboxes, flower beds bursting with personality, and laughter echoing from driveways. And sometimes, just sometimes, I spot Linda across the street, walking her dog, head down, no clipboard in sight. We don't talk, but every time she passes my house, I swear I can see her glance at my mailbox and roll her eyes. I'll take that as a compliment. You know how sometimes life teaches you lessons in the weirdest ways? Well, mine came wrapped in a $500 fine and a shiny black mailbox. After the chaotic HOA meeting, the one where I called out Corinne in front of the entire neighborhood, things finally started to quiet down. For the first time in months, I walked to my mailbox without feeling my blood pressure spike. And there it was. That beautiful black mailbox gleaming in the sunlight, gold numbers shining like a little victory trophy. No red notices, no new warnings, just peace, at least for a while. A week later, the letter that ended it all, about a week after the big showdown, I found an official-looking envelope in my box again. My stomach dropped. For a split second, I thought, oh no, not again. But when I opened it, I froze. Dear resident, after review, the board has decided to withdraw your violation notice. The fine has been rescinded. Thank you for your patience and continued commitment to community standards. That was it. No, sorry for the misunderstanding. No, you were right. Just bureaucratic coldness. But I didn't even care. I laughed out loud, right there on my lawn. My neighbor, Dave, saw me from across the street and yelled, "They finally dropped it?" I held up the letter like it was a winning lottery ticket. "They dropped it." He started clapping. Then his wife joined in. And before I knew it, half the block was cheering. I didn't just beat a $500 fine. I beat the system. The neighborhood awakens. Something interesting started happening after that. People who had stayed quiet for years suddenly started speaking up. A few days later, I noticed my neighbor Susan outside spray painting her old gray mailbox, a deep ocean blue. I walked over and asked, "Going for a new look?" She smirked, inspired by a certain rebel down the street. Within a week, our once perfectly beige and boring neighborhood began transforming. Mailboxes in every shade, forest green, bronze, navy, even one painted like an American flag. The sidewalks that used to look identical now had a personality, a soul. Even the mood of the neighborhood changed. People waved more. They talked instead of just nodding. Kids started playing outside again. Funny how a little rebellion can bring people together. Corinne's silent walks, and then there was Linda, or, as everyone still called her, Corinne. After the meeting fiasco, she kept her distance. No more clipboard patrols. No more early morning inspections. But I still saw her sometimes, walking her little white dog, head held high, pretending everything was fine. Every time she passed my house, her eyes would linger on my mailbox for just a second too long. You could almost see the irritation bubbling under her polite smile. And me? I'd just wave. Big, friendly wave. "Morning, Linda." She'd respond with a tight-lipped grin and hurry off, her dog tugging at the leash. I won't lie, it was satisfying. But after a while, that feeling faded. Because deep down, I started realizing something. Linda wasn't really evil. She was just scared. Scared of losing control, of things changing, of people realizing that rules don't make a community, kindness does. A talk I didn't expect one afternoon. A couple of weeks later, I was out mowing the lawn when I heard a voice behind me. "Your mailbox looks nice." I turned around. It was her, Linda. I smiled, not sure what to say. "Thanks. I was worried you'd send me another fine." She actually chuckled. "I suppose I deserved that." There was a long pause. She looked around the street, at all the new mailboxes, the laughter of kids, the families chatting across lawns. "It's different now," she said quietly. "Better, maybe." I nodded. "It's amazing what happens when people feel like they can breathe a little." She sighed. "You know, I never wanted to be the villain. I just wanted the neighborhood to stay beautiful." "It is," I said, "just not in the way you imagined." She smiled faintly, gave a small nod, and walked away. And for the first time, she didn't look like an enemy. She just looked like a neighbor. A new rule for the HOA. A month later, the HOA held another meeting, this time to officially rewrite some of the community rules. I didn't plan to go. Honestly, I'd had enough drama for a lifetime. But curiosity got the better of me. When I walked into the meeting room, it felt lighter. The board president greeted me with a smile and said, "Glad you're here, Mr. Peterson. We've got something you'll want to see." They unveiled a new line in the bylaw document. Residents may personalize exterior fixtures, including mailboxes, within reasonable aesthetic limits. Community expression is encouraged. The crowd clapped. Someone joked, "Should we name the rule after him?" And before I could even react, the president laughed and said, "The Peterson clause. I like that. It stuck." The power of small wins. It still amazes me that something as small as a mailbox could make such a big difference. Before all this, I thought HOA rules were untouchable, that ordinary people like me couldn't do anything about them. But it turns out, when you push back with facts, calmness, and a little humor, you can shake the whole system. The best part? People started helping each other more. When a neighbor got cited for her flower beds being too tall, 5 of us showed up the next day with shovels and helped her replant them. When a family got fined for their basketball hoop, the entire street signed a petition to get the rule removed. The HOA didn't know what hit them, but it wasn't rebellion anymore. It was community. Real community. Looking back, sometimes I walk outside, coffee in hand, and just stare at that black mailbox. It's not just a box for mail anymore. It's a reminder that peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from standing up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you're the only one doing it. If I had just paid that $500 fine and shut up, things would still be the same. Dull, controlled, lifeless. But because I stood my ground, my neighborhood came alive again. And honestly, that's priceless. The moral, what I learned. So here's what I learned through all this. Some battles aren't about winning money. They're about keeping your dignity. Sometimes rules exist not to protect order, but to protect someone's ego. And sometimes the smallest stand, a mailbox, a letter, a meeting, can inspire change bigger than you ever expected. I know it sounds dramatic, but that mailbox changed my life. It taught me that even the quietest person can make noise if they speak with reason and kindness. Now, every time I see a neighbor paint their mailbox or plant something new, I smile, because it reminds me, change doesn't start with authority. It starts with courage. And hey, if a $500 fine taught me that lesson, totally worth it.